Welcome to the Clock Hour. I'm your host, Marv Kendall. I have two guests today, very special guests. I have Miss Sherry Riddick and I have Miss Latoya McPherson. Um, both ladies are extraordinary to me, and I wanted y'all to get to know who they are. And y'all know Sherry from my last episode, my last show. She was here with me last time. I've been waiting to get you on my show. Miss McPherson. Miss McPherson is an author, and she wrote a book called Scars That Never Heal. Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Sure. My book is actually the story of a woman named Carol, as the character in the book, who kept her attempted abuse a secret in fear of destroying her family. But the book also addresses many of the traumatic events that many of people experience day to day and that tend to leave them scarred, such as not only abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, but divorce, loss of a child, adoption, rejection, and I talk about generational curses and so many other things in this little book, but it definitely touches on a plethora of experiences that many of people can identify with.
You said little book.
Yes, because it's not a thick book.
You tap into all that in
Yes.
that book.
Yes, I do.
Generational curses. Can you explain that a little bit? Because that always stand out to me.
Absolutely. And this actually is one of my very famous chapters, and I do quite a bit of seminars and workshops on the generational curses. But what we find and what many of us are not aware of is the fact that the very behaviors, I'll say, won't say curses for lack of a softer word, but many of the adverse behavior patterns that were prevalent in our families and generations before us, we find that they repeat themselves. And we find that each generation is perpetuating them, because one thing about a generational curse, it always looks for a champion. It always looks for the weakest link to rest upon. That's what makes it generational, because it's looking for someone for each generation to continue to carry out that behavior.
As in one example. Give me an example.
Addiction.
Addiction? Okay.
Addiction. You know, grandpa may have had his bouts with wine, then you see uncle have it, and then, you know, in this generation that we're living in, and you see nowadays we're plagued by many addictions, the heroin epidemic, the marijuana epidemic, and the alcohol, and so many others, even over-the-counter prescriptions. And I mean, addiction can range from gambling to pornography. It's not just always the alcohol and the drugs, but a lot of the behaviors, if you're not careful, they can become addictive.
Right.
So that's just one of them that I'm referring to. But there are also the mental illness patterns. You know, you may not be aware, but maybe your great grandmother suffered a nervous breakdown, and then you saw Aunt Sally battle her bouts with mental depression, and then now you're seeing it amongst your children or amongst the current generations that are living. So those are the things that we tend to, in the former generations. What didn't kill you made you stronger. But as I say in my book, that is not always true, because sometimes what didn't kill us, it tore us down. And we failed to address it. We failed to not address it properly, I should say. You know, what goes on in the family stays in the family. And those are the mantras that we were reared to stick to. But then there were some issues that needed to be talked about, that needed to be addressed. And because when they're not properly addressed, they will perpetuate. They will repeat themselves again. And what happens is each generation, whatever is reinforced becomes strengthened.
So I may be crazy, passed down from my great-great-grandfather. No, I think that's interesting, because you see it. I was having a conversation about the crack epidemic, and people blame Joe Biden for the mass incarceration, but we've been on this earth long enough to know and see what crack did to the communities,
That's right.
mainly ours.
That's right.
You know, so the Black Caucus was part of that too, that bill. So, you know, people scream about that, and and it makes no sense because I know what people were doing out there. I was I was in the 90s, late 80s. I was in like 6 different states. So not only did I see it here, I saw it down south, Midwest, California. So it was bad.
Devil's advocate.
There
Let
you
me
go.
ask you this question. And I don't even know how, I'm just going to throw it out there. I've noticed and I've read about how people drop drugs in different communities. And I feel that if I were to do that, I don't care where,
Right.
if somebody's having a bad day and that's going to make them feel good, they're going to do it.
Right.
So it was put into different areas, and it seemed like inner cities and stuff like that. And when people are, I think, impoverished or they're going through anything, they're going to look for a way out, and
Oh.
whether it be 5 or 10 minutes.
I respect the
So,
hustle.
but and you know
Yes.
what though, even with the people in the Senate and the state and stuff like that, they didn't advocate, I don't think, because it's just like a big circle of nonsense to me at points.
Well, I think people didn't know how to address it
Yeah,
because it didn't affect them.
True.
When they found out little Susie and Timmy were going
Yes.
to the Bronx,
Yes.
or going to Manhattan,
Yes.
to get high and
Yes.
leaving their cars behind and their valuables behind, then it became a problem. When you got the Greenwich kids that were out there and they said, oh, now we have an epidemic.
With their dad's BMW.
Exactly.
But did you remember back in the day when they used to rent their cars to these people?
That too. But it's like anything. Damned if we do, damned if we don't.
Right.
Now,
And where do you start?
Right. On the impoverished aspect of it all, hey, if you find a way to make some money to get out of your environment, so be it.
Right. What are you gonna do?
But the addiction and the trauma and like what you were talking about, what it caused and did to a community, that
That's
was
a great book,
incredible.
though. I'm just hearing you talking about the book. I thought of some things myself that I've gone through. I lost my daughter. So and he knows I got really bad anxiety. So I'm like, I
Sorry
can't
for
wait.
your loss.
Thank you. I can't wait until after this to read the book.
And and one of my my most latest mission from this book is I've been doing grief support groups.
Right.
Because our nation needs a healing.
They do.
I mean, in light of the COVID, we lost over 1 million people. And in addition to that, people lost loved ones to natural causes of death. And again, to just regular tragedies on top of the COVID. So we can see it every day on the news, the shootings in our community.
Yeah.
Unprecedented deaths, the incident in Texas. So it's clear that our nation is grieving.
Yeah.
And I always say that the employer typically gives you 3 to 5 days, but anyone who has been through grief know that it takes you much longer than 3 to 5 days to get over losing a loved one. And some people never really get over it. You learn to live without that person. So that is one of the other healing scars. The scars of grief is another one of my challenges. And I won't say a challenge because I'm actually very honored to be able to provide comfort and let people know that there is a safe place, whether you lost a loved one 18 years ago or 8 days ago.
Yeah.
I like to provide that space for people to be able to express and share, because after 3 to 6 months, when you see people in the grocery store and, they may just say, hey, how you doing, and keep going, and you're still battling with that. You're still trying to deal with that. And even as you mentioned, our community, it's very important for we as a race, as a community, as a culture to know who our senators are, know who our representatives are. We vote for them. We put them in office. And unfortunately, once the election is over, we tend to slide back. But we have a voice, and it's important that we make our voice known in the community, as you say, yes, and especially in our impoverished communities, because everyone's looking for get rich scam because they want a better life. They want a way out. And then we have, when they tear down our community centers, the boys club, girls clubs, when these things are no longer prevalent, then we are no longer empowering our youth to tap into their gifts, to let them know that they can be successful without hitting the streets, that they can be entrepreneurs, they can be the next funeral home owner, they can be the next salon, hairdresser, business owner, as opposed to resorting to other evils of today, you know. But when there's no one present and when there's no one prevalent in the households or in the community, then where does that leave our next generation? Where does our leave our communities? And yes, we hear the success stories all the time from people who grew up, our athletes who may have grew up to, impoverished communities, and they press beyond that, and now they're famous. And then we tend to romanticize this hip hop culture of, Housewives of LA and things to that nature, making our young people feel like, the glamour and the glitz of it, but it's work. Work is required.
I think it's terrible though. Those
social media.
I think it's the housewives and stuff. I mean, it's great for someone, but I think it's bad. Like you're airing out your community, you're airing out your business, so somebody can sit back and laugh at you, and because you're acting like that, they think we all act like that. I don't like
exactly.
I had one working for me.
Really?
From New Jersey.
Really?
Yeah.
She
She worked for me. I was in the system. I worked for the system.
Right.
And I don't think they're stars.
No.
I really don't. I'm not. I wasn't impressed at all.
I mean, to me, I feel like a friend. If I'm your friend, like I can't sit there and talk,
Right.
and then take it to whatever you said. Take it to the next person, or take it to that person. Like, are you sitting there at that time saying, "Go on and talk. I'm gonna listen, and I'm gonna bring it back to that person." Like, how do you sleep at night?
It doesn't. Some people live off of that and thrive off of that.
Can't.
That's like I look at now with, say, for instance, grandmothers, great grandmothers, Big Mama.
No more.
Those were
That's right. No more.
pillars in the family. You have families that are breaking down because they're no longer there.
Now they grandma.
Yeah.
I'm
You
not-
know,
to each his
that's
own.
funny because once my son got older, there was no way I was gonna be in a bar, in the clubs.
You mean you didn't want to be a grandpa?
Nah. I was already hip hop,
That's
so
right. That
that was
know.
enough.
I
I
know.
used to give them mixtapes, go make some money or something.
Right.
But, I still had to hold my position
Right.
as a
That's
parent.
Right. That's
Yes.
And, I was in the school system recently, and something is wrong. You put your kids in the teacher's hands for how many ever hours, something is wrong. Something is really wrong.
I mean, I think some teachers have gone to a limit of where I understand, but then I just feel like these kids these days and the respect they don't have is just too much for me.
That goes home.
I think it's a double-sided, double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And as I can speak to that as an educator, teaching the college level students, but home training is still
Exactly.
necessary.
Yeah.
And in defense to the teachers, many of them have to enforce manners and discipline before they can get to the lesson. And that should not be. Most of this, what the teachers are doing, should be addressed at home.
Right.
And then we now want our teachers to become social workers and psychiatrists,
Security.
and to deal with all of these other issues that need to be addressed properly from the homestead.
Yeah.
And then we have a generation, I still remember teachers that impacted my life greatly. The various little lessons they taught, or whether it was something like collecting stamps or whatever, little, and, we're living in a society today, and I have heard students say to me, I want to be a teacher because I want summers off. I want summers off. So teaching, I always equate to nursing. You have to have a heart for it. You have to have a passion for it. You have to be able to teach and be willing to teach regardless of the benefits of it, you know, because there are benefits. You may not see it today, but children will remember you. But we're, you know, everything today is, does it, we have a lot of teachers, not all of them, because we still have teachers who have that heart, but many of our teachers do not have that compassion, and they're not really willing to work with that child. So everything gets labeled as a disability.
Yes.
And it's not a learning disability. Sometimes it's a teaching disability, because as a teacher, you have to be creative to prepare your lessons to teach that child that may not be able to adapt or catch on as easily as the next child. Because everyone learns differently, but everyone can learn.
That's right.
Like, I had one incident, and coming from corrections, and I'm just not used to it. I have to turn certain mechanisms off. So the student would walk back and forth, and when they were doing it, they would put their hand in the bin with coloring pencils every time. So I knew that there was something wrong,
Right.
Anxiety or whatever, but after a while, like, I'm not a morning person, so it got on my nerves. So, I'm like, why don't you go sit down? No. Excuse me? No. Go sit down. No. Then the shut up comes in. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm an adult. You're a kid.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't know about me? What am I supposed to know? That your name and your kid.
Point blank and period.
Outside of school, I'm an adult, you're a kid. Inside of school, I'm an adult, you're a kid. Respect. 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 I was in the grocery store one day, and I was standing there, and this lady walked up in front of me. I said, excuse me, you didn't see me standing there? It's like, oh, I just got this. Oh, I just got this.
It's amazing.
So you turn around and ask the person behind me, is it okay,
Exactly.
You could have did the same thing to me. So there is something missing. Something is wrong.
Yeah.
I guess maybe it's a younger parent. I was a young parent.
Right.
I
we
can't
taught
even.
respect.
Yes. But even to this day, there's a level of respect that some people are missing. I don't know what they're teaching their kids at home, because my child is not my friend.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm not partying with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your child is not your equal.
No.
No. So something is missing, and I heard a couple of other kids have something to say to a couple of teachers, and I'm looking at it like something is wrong.
Just I respect you so much for being an educator, because I just
It's not easy.
I couldn't me myself I already know, like, these kids. Oh no, I just could not, because I'm 52, and like these 20-year-olds, it's like, excuse me.
And that's the age, and that's one of the reasons why I opt for the college age, because they are adults, but they're still,
Young.
you see the deficits where things should have been addressed in the K through 12 area.
Early on, right?
Yes, yes.
Even that,
yes.
you remember growing up, my she used to say, I better not have to ever come up to the school.
That's right.
it.
That's right.
And then another thing, what I told my kids is, if something happens, you need to tell me first. Because if somebody else gets in touch with me, they told me that's what happened. Point
Right.
blank and period. There's no fixing it. And I think these parents, when they get up to the school and my child, you don't realize these teachers are dealing with 30 kids, 5 classes. I just can't. I respect you so much.
I was in there.
Yeah.
And
Oh, you're in the school too, like that?
I was as a sub. So I was moving around
God
from high
bless
school
you.
to high
Yes.
school to high school to
Yes.
high school, because I did not want to sit still. I
Yeah.
wanted to really know what was going on,
Right.
because I seen a video, and I just
Yeah.
wanted to know, like, and then that some of them have issues, previous issues or whatever, but I'm a sub. I'm not a counselor.
Right.
So please don't be disrespectful. We'll end up on the news or something. I don't, even working in the prison environment, there's a certain respect that you gain from working with quote unquote inmates. And I never wanted to work in that environment. But then I had to realize what I was actually there for. And it wasn't about me, it was about them. So the level of respect from this individual that society calls a criminal, a convict, or whatever, you get more respect from them, vice from a kid in high school.
You know what else I used to tell my kids too? All of them. I used to let them know, I said, look, I chastise you and I punish you because when you get older, I don't want somebody else to have to do it. I said, and that person won't have the same love and care that I do.
Makes sense.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
Makes
Like
sense.
these kids, I mean, even if you let your kid be bad, spoil them or whatever, eventually they're gonna meet up with an officer, or they're gonna meet up with they're gonna meet up with someone, and they're gonna try that same thing they do on you, and that person's not gonna love or care for them, and they're gonna lock them up or throw them in the back. You know?
I was in the military.
Yeah.
And the little Asian dude, he made me uncomfortable. He was yay big,
Right.
but
Respect.
he was on it.
Wow.
And he ran up and down me. Basically I was out of pocket. So he pulled my card. Only thing I could say is, yes, chief, no, chief. And this is in San Diego.
Wow.
And I remember it, because I was taught to respect people, and you give that respect. I picked up my son one time at the youth squad. Never again. I told them when I picked him up, y'all won't see him down here again.
What's the youth squad?
Youth squad. Every police department has this division that,
Oh, like
yeah,
what do you call it? Like, what do they do with kids? Like juvenile?
yeah, sort of, kinda, but that's their
Right.
department.
Yeah.
But it was something silly. He was pool hopping.
Yeah.
You jumping in the pool when it's closed and stuff. Not only is that dangerous, but
Remember when they used to
you're
just
wrong.
call the parent though instead of taking them downtown?
Ain't no such animal now.
No.
Because that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
School to prison pipeline.
There
School
it
to
is.
prison
Yeah.
pipeline.
And we have no catch net for our children
No.
after that.
Yeah.
You do have the Job Corps for the truancy and those who may be struggling or gotten into a little trouble. But as you mentioned, the respect. You're an
Right.
adult, they're a child. And the minute we have taken that respect out of the homes, if they don't respect who's in the home, they're not going to respect the teacher, the police
Exactly.
officer, or anyone else.
Right.
And I know times have changed, and you see it all the time on social media. We cannot raise children in today's society like we were raised, but there are basic ingredients
Right.
that should never leave.
Right.
And that is respect.
Right.
And and I say that it's just like when you're baking anything, you bake a cake, you see all these recipes, you could substitute this to make it more moist, you could substitute that, but then there are the core ingredients that you still need to get that cake, make a cake.
Right.
And that's how it is in rearing
That's
children.
right.
The Bible clearly tells us to train them up in the way they should go. And there's really no guidance in today's society because we have really opened the door to liberality. Whatever you feel, say what you want to say, do what you want to do.
No filters.
No filters, no accountability.
Right.
And as you mentioned, and then when they get in the hands of the police officer, they're not going to handle you as the people who love you.
No.
And then we're marching and rallying.
Yeah.
Oh, you killed our 14 or you killed our 15-year-old. But what took place prior to that getting there? And even in the school system, as you said, You know, there are issues, but again, what's the root of it? There is a root to it.
Right.
And oftentimes, it's in the home.
Right.
And many of our children, as young and innocent as they are already scarred.
Right.
They've seen so much. They've experienced so much.
Right.
They don't know how to channel that emotion. They have no one to express it to that they can trust.
So let me ask you this, okay? When we were growing up, I'm not me specific because my grandma was home, but I know kids that would come home by themselves,
Latchkey
feed
kids.
themselves
Yes.
and whatever. But they were respectful too. Like they would know, don't cross that.
Yeah.
Because parents instilled a sense of fear, not as in fearful of you, but fear as in reverence for you.
Yeah, or what
they
will happen.
respected their parents. It was a fear of respect, out of respect, not so much as in running into a corner or as I'm frightened by them, but
Right.
when your mother said stay in until
stayed
I get
in.
out of work,
Yes.
you stayed in.
Yes.
When a neighbor said stop throwing those rocks, you stopped throwing
Yeah.
those rocks.
Right.
You didn't question them.
No.
You didn't, and you
No.
know, and you knew, and your mother was okay with that. She
Right.
trusted your neighbors, and
Yeah.
any parents back then realized that any other adult is not going to tell you to do something wrong,
Right.
and that they're helping each other. So
Right.
now we're all in silos. This is me, mine, and my four, no more. I run my house. I tell them, don't you say anything.
Right.
And because of this, now you cannot say anything.
Right.
And we see the mess we're in. And
Right.
you know, when we see what we're seeing on the news, you know, yes, it's horrible. But it, like I said, it started somewhere. And when these issues are swept under the rug or not adequately addressed, then
Right.
this is what we're seeing today.
Right.
I got to close out. How do people get a hold of you real quick?
Sure, they can get a hold of me through Instagram, LATMCPH_author. I'm also on Twitter with the same handle. Also, you can go to my website, which is LatoyaMcPherson.com.
Okay. All right. Once again, for the people, by the people, about the people, thank you for tuning in to the Klock Hour. And I thank you ladies for joining me.
Thank
this
you for
was
having me.
a great discussion. We can go on for days about
Yeah.
this,
Yes.
but we hit key points and that was important. Thank you, and thank everybody for tuning in. Thank Mr. Al back there and Constance. Appreciate your time and your engineering. Peace.